Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, back with another video, this time on the Apple event that just took place in Brooklyn, the October event, where Apple covered some new things, some new products that they had, including a new MacBook Air, a new Mac Mini, and of course a new iPad Pro. So let's go right into it and discuss all of those new products in that order. And we'll also be discussing some new details, some things that weren't really announced in the keynote and that we have only found out just recently. So let's go in order of how things were announced at the actual keynote. So we will start with the brand new Retina MacBook Air. So this actually was a rumored product for quite some time now. We've been hearing whispers about a new MacBook Air in the works. We weren't really sure about what it would be. Would it just be a new MacBook Air with USB-C ports tacked on? Would it have a Retina display? Would it have the same display? But now we finally know the answer. This is a MacBook Air that is very similar to the MacBook Pro without the touch bar. So it has a new Retina screen, so obviously the same 13.3-inch Retina display that's found on the current 13-inch MacBook Pros. It gets rid of the silver bezels on the side of the device, so you get rid of those silver bezels, and it has black bezels. Very minimal bezels, very similar to the MacBook Pro line. Has that kind of tapered design of the MacBook Air where it kind of gets slimmer as it goes across the device. It also reduces the weight of the device a little bit, so it's actually going to be 2.75 pounds as opposed to the 3 pounds that the previous version of the MacBook Air weighed. Also, it's going to be packing in the butterfly keyboard, the 3rd generation keyboard that was recently found on the 13-inch and 15-inch MacBook Pro refreshes. So some softer, quieter keys while you're typing and hopefully some improved keyboard reliability. I know there's been a few issues with the new keyboards, but it doesn't seem as widespread as the 2016 keyboard problems that people were facing. This MacBook Pro is also going to have 2 Thunderbolt 3 USB-C ports, no other ports on it, so no USB-A, no HDMI, no SD card slot that some people were hoping for. Some of the older ports that were found on the MacBook Air will not be on this one. It seems that Apple is going full ahead with Thunderbolt 3 USB-C. Again, you know my opinion on it. If you've watched my previous videos, I know for some people it is a big pain point, but for me, I really do like Thunderbolt 3 USB-C. Some manufacturers only put USB-C on their laptop lines. With Apple, they actually put Thunderbolt 3, which is a very versatile port, powerful enough to drive external GPUs, powerful enough to run 5K displays, so it is a great port. And if you have like a small adapter, you can actually get all of the ports that were found on the MacBook Air and much, much more. It is a very powerful port, and it can actually power a really powerful adapter to give you back all those ports that you might be missing. So these MacBook Airs are going to come with dual-core processors, which is interesting considering the MacBook Pro line now has quad-core and 6-core processors. So it seems like those dual-core versions of the processors are reserved for the MacBook Air, which makes sense. MacBook Air customers generally don't need that much power. Usually it's aimed more at students, people who are just starting out using MacBooks. In the past, MacBook Airs, though, have been versatile enough to handle some light tasks, like some light video editing, some light photo editing, and I believe we will see the same kind of performance here with these new MacBook Airs. Another interesting thing about these new MacBook Airs is that they're actually not going to have the touch bar on top of them. Now, they will actually get Touch ID, which will be in a single button on the top right of the keyboard, but they will not be getting the touch bar on the top of the line. Obviously, the touch bar has an OLED panel, which is probably really expensive to manufacture, so if they're going for a more budget-friendly laptop line, if they're going for that MacBook Air and they want to hit a price point, it would only make sense that there is no touch bar on top of it, but it could be a sign that Apple isn't committed to the touch bar, and maybe it won't be a part of the future laptop lines as well. Although Apple didn't add the touch bar to the top of it, they did add the T2 chip, which is a security chip, a controller. It actually controls the memory and the solid-state storage on the MacBook Air, controls things like the FaceTime camera and the microphones, and that's actually going to make the MacBook Air really secure. It's going to allow it to have super fast SSD speed, so it's really nice that Apple's actually adding the T2 chip to more products in its line. And of course, the Retina MacBook Air didn't really hit that starting price of $999. It's actually going to be $200 more expensive, and it's going to start at $1,199. And I'm also disappointed to see that it still has a 128 gigabyte base storage. Really would have been nice if we started at $256, but I guess Apple is making concessions to hit that lower price point and still keep their margins. Again, a very interesting laptop. People have been waiting for a redesign of the MacBook Air. Now, speaking of a product that hasn't been refreshed in a long time, the ancients referred to this as the Mac Mini. Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time. So the Mac Mini doesn't get a really new redesign. The Mac Mini basically looks the exact same as the old Mac Mini. It doesn't get any smaller, which is a shame because there are computers out there that are smaller than the Mac Mini, but I think Apple was more focused on making this more powerful, packing it in the same design to do some cost saving, and also because Mac Minis are used as servers, they are used in rack mounts, so it makes sense to keep that same design so people who are used to stacking them on top of each other, people who are used to putting them in a server mount, don't really have to change their workflow. However, although it doesn't really look different with a new redesign, it does now come in space gray as opposed to silver, kind of going with Apple's new approach to Pro products by making a space gray version for them. The new Mac Mini starts at $799 and you can configure it up to about $4,000 by loading it with tons of stuff. You can get up to 64 gigabytes of storage and up to a 2 terabyte solid state drive. And you can also pack it with either a quad core processor or a 6-core processor, which is actually pretty powerful. I believe you can get an i7 6-core processor, which is kind of similar to the ones found in the current MacBook Pros, and it's actually more powerful than the processors currently found in the iMac because the iMac has not yet received a refresh with those new processors. Now on the back of the Mac Mini, it actually has a ton of ports on it. It's going to have 4 Thunderbolt USB-C ports, so again, if you're going to plug in an external display like the one I have behind me, or you're gonna plug in maybe a Thunderbolt dock, a Thunderbolt hard drive, or even an external graphics card, you can now do that on the new Mac Mini. It also has 2 old-style USB-A 3.0 ports, so again, if you need USB-A ports, the Mac Mini is actually gonna have you. So it's interesting to see that Apple is still retaining the USB-A ports on the desktop lines with their iMac, iMac Pro, Mac Mini, and also giving them USB-C ports, while the MacBook, the portable lines, are only going with USB-C from this point on. It also has an Ethernet port, which you can configure up to a 10 gigabit Ethernet port, and a HDMI 2.0 port, which makes sense considering that the Mac Mini is a bring your own monitor solution, and a lot of USB-C monitors are pretty expensive, but you can get a really inexpensive HDMI monitor. So if you're looking to build a cheap Mac setup, you can actually go with an HDMI monitor or an older monitor and hook up your Mac Mini to that. Or what's really popular is to actually hook up a Mac Mini to, say, a TV, make your own media server. So having an HDMI port there is obviously a welcome addition. Really isn't too much to cover with the Mac Mini there, just basically a Pro refresh. Okay, now we have the main event, the thing I think a lot of people were waiting for, the new iPad Pros, the long-rumored bezel-less, home button removing iPad Pro. All those rumors were true. It is finally here. And it looks a lot like the leaks we've been seeing for the redesign, where it kind of has an even bezel all around the side of the iPad, and it doesn't have a notch like some people were thinking it might have. Now, this new iPad Pro comes in 2 sizes. You get an 11-inch iPad Pro and a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. So the 11-inch is actually a little bit bigger than the 10.5-inch iPad Pro from last year. What Apple decided to do with that model was actually increase the screen size by shrinking the bezels around that, but keeping it in the same body as a 10.5-inch iPad Pro, so you're getting an 11-inch screen in the same exact body size. With the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, you kind of got the opposite. What they did is they chopped off the top forehead and the bottom chin, and basically gave you a smaller device with the same exact 12.9-inch screen size. So the 11-inch iPad Pro is still going to weigh 1.03 pounds, but the 12.9-inch is actually going to weigh less. I believe the last version was 1.57 pounds, and this version is actually going to weigh 1.4 pounds. That is a pretty dramatic reduction in the weight of the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. Both of the new iPad Pros are going to have 5.9 millimeters of thinness. This is really, really thin, and the redesign of the iPad Pro is kind of getting away from that kind of curved design of the iPhones. It's kind of getting a more iPhone 5S type of design, a more squarish type of design on the edges. A really nice redesign. Obviously, the iPad Pro is going to pack a liquid Retina LCD display. If you didn't see that coming, if you didn't see them using the liquid Retina marketing term, well, what can I say? But apparently that is the liquid Retina display found in the very popular iPhone XR. Apple also added Face ID. This was long rumored for a long time, and there have actually been rumors that Apple wouldn't be able to get Face ID to work in portrait mode and in landscape orientation, but it appears they have figured that out, although when you do set up Face ID for the first time, you will have to have it in portrait mode. But yes, Face ID coming to the iPad Pro, which is really, really nice, because after you get used to Face ID for a while, you kind of forget about fingerprint sensors, and when you go to unlock your iPad, it's kind of a 2 seconds of, why isn't this unlocked? Oh wait, I gotta put my thumb right here to unlock it. So I'm really happy to see Apple unifying the iOS design language with Face ID coming to the iPad Pro. One of the surprises, even though it's been rumored for a little while, is that Apple is finally switching from Lightning to USB-C on the new iPad Pros. I did a video in the past kind of talking about the capabilities of USB-C on what we might see them use this for the iPad Pro. I said it would have to be a pretty significant difference for them to change the port. It wouldn't just be to charge the device faster, and I was kind of proven right on that. Apple added some really cool capabilities that make sense on an iPad Pro. Some of the examples they gave was hooking up a 5K external display, using that as an extended display, using that as a mirrored display. Say you're doing video editing, say you wanted to showcase your video, you can actually hook that up to an external display, kind of like the 5K USB-C display I have behind me, and you can just get your iPad Pro to work on that. Apple also showcased some other examples which make sense on an iPad. So say you have a USB-C camera, you could just plug that directly into the iPad Pro, load off your photos and videos directly into the iPad. You can also plug in audio equipment now. So if you have a USB-C audio interface, you could just take your iPad Pro, plug it into there, play music, do DJing, maybe record a podcast or something like that with that audio equipment. And you're gonna need that now because Apple actually got rid of the headphone jack on the iPad Pro. So sad day for the headphone jack. And now you can actually charge your iPhone with the cable as well. So the iPad has a big battery. So now you can actually take your USB-C cable, I'm guessing a USB-C to Lightning cable, plug it into the iPhone, and your iPad will actually send power to your iPhone. A pretty cool capability if you're in a pinch. You have your iPad and you have your iPhone runs out of battery, don't have to worry. You can just use your iPad Pro, plug it in with a USB-C cable. So obviously a new iPad Pro means a fresh new Apple chip as well, and they're not just sticking a regular A12 in there, they're gonna be making another X version of their chip. So this is the A12X that we talked about in previous videos. It's gonna feature an 8-core design that can actually power all 8 cores at once for certain tasks if you're doing something really powerful, so that's really awesome. Really good level of performance on these iPad Pros coming up. Very interesting to see what the Geekbench scores is going to be. I think Apple said in the keynote that it's more powerful than 93% of laptops in consumers' hands right now. So really crazy stuff we're seeing in this iPad Pro tablet. Also going to have a 7-core GPU, which Apple said was comparable to an Xbox One S, which is also pretty crazy when you consider the size of an Xbox One S. I, for one, can't wait to test out Civilization 6 on that 7-core GPU. It already runs really well on a 10.5-inch iPad Pro, so very interested to see how it runs on the new ones. And I'm guessing you're really going to be appreciating that performance when Adobe finally brings Photoshop to the iPad, which they will be bringing in 2019. It was one of the apps that were demoed on stage. The iPad Pros are also more expensive. The 11-inch starts at $799, while the 12.9-inch starts at $999. So yeah, that's pretty expensive for iPads. They're kind of moving into a more computer-ish pricing territory. Still not too bad on the 11-inch, but yeah, that 12.9-inch version is going to run you a lot of money, especially if you go into those higher storage options. You could end up spending a lot of money on this product. 1 terabyte version of the iPad Pro is actually going to have 6 gigabytes of RAM, while all other storage options are apparently only going to have 4 gigabytes of RAM. Really interesting. I've never seen Apple put different RAM options for the iPads, especially with different storages. Really interesting approach here. I've never seen Apple put more RAM into a higher storage iPad device, or even iOS device for that matter. They've always been the same RAM for each model, no matter what storage capacity you got. We also found out that even though the cameras in this are supposed to be upgraded with Apple's new Smart HDR, that they're going to be missing optical image stabilization, and they're going to be missing one of the elements on the lens. Instead of a 6-element lens, it's going to be a 5-element lens. I actually don't mind iPad photography. I totally understand it. I know that the best camera you have on you is the one you want to use, and if you're holding your iPad Pro, and even if you're outside and that's the only camera you have, I know some tech reviewers will go, hey, you look ridiculous holding that big iPad Pro around. Well, I think people think you look ridiculous when you're running around with your 5K RED cameras, so you really don't have any room to judge people who are taking photos, who are taking videos on an iPad. So really upsetting to see Apple kind of remove some features from that camera. I know a lot of people don't use iPads for a camera, but just taking it away, hopefully something in the software maybe could fix the optical image stabilization, but yeah, just really disappointed to see Apple taking away features in the camera line for the iPad. And of course, we have to mention the 2 new accessories with the iPad Pro. So now we get a redesigned smart keyboard that actually is a folio smart keyboard, which means it actually covers the back of the iPad Pro. So the old smart keyboard only kind of covered the front of the iPad Pro when it was in storage, and it would fold out, and the back was exposed, but now this one will actually cover the back, giving you a little bit more protection. And it looks like Apple has changed the smart connector. Instead of going on the side of the device, it'll actually go on the back of the device. Of course, we have a brand new redesign Apple Pencil 2, a big welcome refreshment on this one. So it kind of has a new redesign. It looks like it's going to be a little bit easier to hold. It also has a new double tap gesture to get to quick actions, which is something I know that artists have also said in the past that they'd like to see on an Apple Pencil, some kind of shortcuts button. So say you wanted to quickly get to the eraser, say you wanted to change your brushes, say you wanted to zoom in and out, you now have a quick shortcut action that you can map to the Apple Pencil. And the Apple Pencil 2 is actually going to change the way it charges. So the old Apple Pencil, you would stick in the lightning port on the iPad to charge, or you could plug it in regularly. This Apple Pencil is actually going to charge magnetically on the top, so it actually gets this really nice animation too when you drop it in, and a really nice satisfying click. And it'll charge the Apple Pencil and also store it at the same time. So that was one of the biggest complaints with the first Apple Pencil, the way you charge it and the way you store it, and Apple has now addressed both of those. Yeah, really excited for this new Apple Pencil 2. Finally, a place to store it, a really nice way to charge it, and the design, the shortcut actions, I think it's just going to be really cool. I think it's going to be a really nice improvement to the first generation Apple Pencil. Of course, I'll have to test it and kind of give you a review of it. Okay guys, and I think that's just about almost everything Apple announced at their event. Let me know in the comments below what you are most excited for. Are you more excited for that redesigned iPad Pro? Are you more excited for the new Retina MacBook Air? Or are you like me? Are you a Mac Mini fanatic and you've been waiting your entire life for a redesign of the Mac Mini? Let me know in the comments below. And as always guys, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care everyone.